Hello, this is Chuck Ridgway, Automation Technology Manager from Horner. Thanks for joining us for another Tuesday live stream. We think we've got a really informative topic for you today. Here it is. Using the Horner Solutions chart recorder for water discharge monitoring. Now, the Horner Solutions chart recorder is a very versatile device. It can be used in a lot of different applications, including the one we're going to be talking about today, and that is water discharge monitoring. Now, there's no question that there are literally tens of thousands, if not more, manufacturing companies that discharge water either into municipal water systems or maybe even directly into streams and lakes. So, of course, they are subject to regulation. And today, we're going to bring in an industry expert who's going to help educate us a little bit on some of those requirements, regulatory-wise, as well as some of the water quality metrics that are involved whenever you're discharging water in this way. So without further ado, let's bring in my friend and colleague, Robert from Frontline. How are we doing today, Robert?
Hey, Chuck. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Now, I've got a lot of appreciation for the expertise you have in the process industry because that's really not been my area of expertise over my career. So why don't you let our audience know kind of your background and some of the types of applications or industries that you serve on a regular basis?
So my background is primarily in process instrumentation and control. So I spent my career measuring anything in a pipe, anything in a tank, and being able to figure out how to use that information at a plant. My representative company covers about 5 states now, and we focus mainly on helping customers with process instrumentation, process control, in a variety of different industries. So we cover water, wastewater, we cover food and beverage, chemical, oil and gas. Any place that would use water in their process is really important to us. And you usually have to measure a lot of things in those processes to make sure that you're compliant or to make sure that you understand your process properly.
Excellent. So I'm really looking forward to allowing Robert to share his expertise with us today. So we're going to do something a little bit different. What we're going to do is Robert actually is going to join me as we present the material. So again, he can lend his unique expertise to the topic today. All right. So I'm going to bring Robert back in just here in a minute while I quickly review the breakdown of today's topic. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so today we're going to mention a few of the affected industries for water discharge monitoring, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what's involved with the regulations. We'll talk about some of the common water quality metrics, and we're going to let Robert educate us on those, why they're important, how you need to measure them. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about why the Horner Solutions chart recorder is a really straightforward, common sense, and economical way of meeting some of these requirements. All right, let me go ahead and bring Robert back in, and let's dive right in. Okay, so on the screen here, Robert, I've got a bunch of industries that I think are potentially affected. Looks like that's a pretty big list here, isn't it?
Yeah. Pretty much any plant in any industry that's using water in their process, or they produce water as a part of their cleaning processes, are going to be measuring and monitoring their wastewater. So anything from chemical, oil and gas, pulp and paper. Pulp and paper uses a lot of water. Anything in food and beverage also will produce a lot of water from either their rinsing or cleaning process or from their production process. So it's a very common resource that we kind of all use and all need to understand as far as what we're tracking and what we're monitoring when we're putting it back into a water stream, when we're sending it to a municipal plant. So it's a very common application.
Excellent. So earlier when we talked, you had mentioned several different water quality metrics that we should discuss today, and I've got them listed here on the screen. But I know this is really only a partial list, right? It really varies a lot by application.
Yeah, every plant's different and every process is different. I think that this list is pretty general as far as a lot of the measurements that are taking for industrial wastewater treatment or for a basic municipal wastewater treatment at a smaller plant. These are a good general foundation to lay on your as far as your water analysis and what you're measuring and what we keep track of. So I think it's a very good starting point for this.
Okay, terrific. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of one by one with these different water quality metrics, and Robert's going to let us know why they're important and how we might measure them. All right, let's go ahead and continue. All right, let's get started with flow. Why is it important to measure flow?
So there's really two main discharging types, whether you're discharging directly into a stream or open body of water, or whether the plant is discharging their effluent into a municipal water treatment plant. Both of these are important, and both of them require a flow measurement of some sort to understand how much water is going through the plant on a daily basis, if there's an average flow rate that they're looking for, or if they're trying to understand the total amount of flow that's going through the plant. A lot of this is going to be permitted related, just so that the plant can understand, the city can understand how much water the plant's using and how much they have to take into account on their treatment process. Because every wastewater stream is different. A lot of the times the municipal plant will have to react to that a little differently depending on what industry that they're serving. Likewise, with any open body of water, because every industry is so much different, they have to understand how much water is going into a body of water to make sure that it's going to not affect the wildlife around it.
Terrific. So how would you, sorry to interrupt there, Robert, but so what kind of instruments would you use to kind of measure flow?
Typically for these types of flow, we're using either an open channel flow measurement. So we're taking a weir or a flume and we're measuring the level on that known obstruction to get an accurate flow measurement. Or if it's in a pressurized pipe, in a full pipe situation, a lot of the times we'll use a electromagnetic flow meter. And both of those are really accurate ways to do inline flow measurement. And both of them can give you the analog signals that you would need for tracking this information.
Terrific. Let's go ahead and move on to the next parameter. Let's talk about pH for a minute. Go ahead.
Sure. So pH is a really important metric for water quality for a couple of reasons. Typically in this situation, for either for wastewater treatment or industrial wastewater equalization, we're looking for it to be fairly neutral. So somewhere between 6 and 8 pH. You don't want it to be too acidic or too caustic to cause upsets in either the treatment plant that's treating the water or to the body of water that you're going into. So one good thing that we try to do is understand what parts of the process affect the pH the most. Is it the cleaning process? Is it some part of the production process? And a lot of industrial wastewater treatment plants, they'll have their own equalization basins where they dose either an acid or a caustic before it goes out to get that number closer to 7. So the goal here really is to stay close to 7. And any kind of spikes can upset either the permitting regulation or it can upset the plant that it's going into. So typically this is just a pH sensor. It's a glass sensor with an electrode. And they're really common in the field to be online. This usually goes alongside a lab test. So we'll do an online measurement for monitoring in this situation. And a lot of the regulatory documentation may require a lab tested pH. So it has a little bit more of a fixed setting and it takes variables out of it. A lot of what we try to look for in a pH sensor is something that's easy to maintain, easy to clean and calibrate. If you're using online pH, one of the biggest things to remember is to keep it clean and calibrated. So the best pH probes are the ones that are easiest to clean and calibrate.
Nice. Okay. All right. How about dissolved oxygen? Why is that important?
So dissolved oxygen comes up a lot, especially in the wastewater treatment side. They use dissolved oxygen both as a process parameter for controlling the aeration basins, and they also use dissolved oxygen on the effluent whenever the water leaves the plant to make sure that it's high enough that it won't affect any kind of wildlife in the area. So if an industrial water treatment plant or a municipal water treatment plant has a situation where their DO leaving the plant is too low, it can affect the stream that it's going into. So typically we want to make sure that the dissolved oxygen is at a certain level where if they have to aerate more or if they have to make sure they're changing the process to get the DO levels up, it can help sustain a healthier water stream. So typically we're using a couple of different technologies for dissolved oxygen. And again, with any of these water parameters that are online, the most important things is that they're easy to maintain and easy to calibrate so that you can ensure that you're getting a good long-term measurement out of it and not dealing with a constant error in the measurement. So that's why we like to track these over time and trend these over time because it's good to have some sort of alarming to understand your process. If it's starting to go a little bit close to the limit of where you want to be, it's good to catch these things before they go into a warning or they go into a situation where it may be over what you're supposed to be regulated on your permit.
Sounds good. Okay, now let's talk about ORP. What does ORP stand for?
ORP is oxidation reduction potential. And there's a couple of different reasons that it's used. Generally speaking, we're using ORP to monitor biological reactions. So it's a general indication for that reaction and what it's doing in the plant and how it's set. So again, typically with this, it's used as an indicator to understand if the treatment process that they're using is working as they expect. And if you look at it sort of like a funnel, as far as catching exactly what's going on in the process, the ORP may be your first step to understanding if something's changed in the water that you're not expecting. So your ORP may change, then to look at some other parameter to see if there's something else going on in the water. So typically this is used and tracked for, again, making sure equalization's happening so that the water's being treated. Sometimes it's used as a control parameter for different dosing. And it's very similar to a pH probe in the sense that it's usually in the same kind of a form factor. And typically it's important that it's, again, clean and easy to calibrate. So those are really the most important things with ORP. It's a really good general measurement that's used a lot.
Okay, terrific. Okay, now let's talk about chlorine.
So yeah, anything with and chlorine is the most popular disinfectant for water treatment. So on the wastewater side, it's used a couple of different ways. For wastewater, if there's any kind of biological process going on, chlorine is used to disinfect the water to make sure that if there is something that could grow, that it's not in the water when it's discharged. So in wastewater, really, it's understanding where your zero is for chlorine, because you don't want to have too much chlorine in your wastewater so that you're outside of your regulatory limit. Too much chlorine in your effluent stream can cause upsets to the wildlife around it when it goes out. So when we talk about wastewater chlorine measurement, it's really understanding what your zero level is to try to get to your lower level limit. On the water treatment side, on the drinking water side, it's really trying to understand how much free chlorine you have available in the distribution side to make sure that the water, when you open your spout, is properly disinfected and that it's healthy and clean to drink. So it's a couple of different measurements around chlorine, and it's one that it's super important, and it's one that's used a lot in a lot of different ways on both sides of the water treatment process. So for chlorine, typically these are done both. Again, this is one of those ones that's done online with a colorimetric test or a potentiometric test, depending on what kind of a chlorine probe or chlorine sensor you're using. And it's used in conjunction with the lab tests where they will check these values and make sure that they're trending in the right direction. And for what we typically are running into and typically trying to assist with is, again, understanding when you're getting close to your limits of chlorine. So on the wastewater side, if you have too much chlorine going into your waste effluent, you want to know ahead of time before it becomes a problem later on. And then on the drinking water side, if you have too little, you want to make sure that there's enough free chlorine to properly disinfect the water. And it's a lot easier to catch these things and alarm on these things before they become a problem.
Nice. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about temperature. Do they measure the temperature of the water as they're discharging it?
Sometimes temperature can be an important measurement, depending on the process. If something has a really hot waste stream, a lot of times they'll monitor temperature and their equalization to make sure that it's closer to where they expect it to be, just as a precautionary thing most of the time. You don't want to put boiling hot water out into a stream if it's not supposed to be there. So a lot of the times temperature is kind of a secondary measurement. A lot of the other measurements that are on this list are dependent upon temperature as well. So a lot of the times you'll need to understand the temperature from what the sensor's seeing, and it's always good to have a secondary temperature of what your wastewater treatment process is showing in certain places, so you can get a better idea of your chlorine levels, for example, or your pH levels. Both of those are kind of dependent on temperature sometimes. So it's another important measurement.
Okay. Now, before we start talking about the Horner Solutions chart recorder, and why it's a good solution for folks who are dealing with these issues, for manufacturers dealing with these issues, let me ask you to kind of expound a little bit more on the types of requirements. Are these companies that are subject to regulation, are they having to do a lot of reporting? Are they having to do a lot of data logging? What do those requirements look like? And I know they vary.
And they vary from plant to plant, but generally speaking, they'll have to have an understanding of how much water they're discharging, and then these couple of parameters that we've been discussing. If they are subject to using chemicals or using part of their process that would affect those measurements, they'll be required to at least trend that data on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. Some of them have to report out a daily number. Maybe it's from a lab test where the actual report will show a daily value for that pH or an hourly value for that pH level whenever it's going out. So the process and why we add this solution specifically is that this chart recorder allows you to land 4 of those values at the chart recorder and be able to record them and data log them with timestamps. So a lot of the time what it can do is take the pen and paper out of the equation. So instead of having to deal with tracking all this manually in a spreadsheet or on a notepad to get ready for your report, whenever it's time to get that report together, if it's the same sensor you're using for your online measurement, you could simply pull the data log file from the chart recorder and you have your timestamp information. You can really see your process over time and be able to track that data and track any upsets. So a lot of the time, what we're trying to do with the chart recorder is to understand if there is a process upset, when it happened, what was going on in the plant at that time, and how to prevent that kind of an upset in the future and try to keep everything under that regulatory limit.
Sounds good. So effectively, let me go ahead and fill in some of the users on the chart recorder, just from a more general basis. That was great information on specifically how it's going to be used in this application. But for those of you who aren't familiar, the Horner Solutions chart recorder, first of all, Horner Solutions products are a little different in that they're always supplied, pre-programmed, ready to configure from the touchscreen. So in the case of the chart recorder, you're getting a unit pre-installed in an enclosure with wiring already landed at a terminal strip for field wiring. And again, as Robert mentioned, it really provides a lot of the logging requirements and trending requirements that companies who are doing water discharge can really use. And with all of the Horner Solutions products, again, there is no Seascape software programming required. Everything is configured from the touchscreen. Now, Robert already went through some of the good reasons why the chart recorder is a good solution here. Why don't you just go ahead and cover these quickly again, just in as a quick summary, Robert?
So what we can do with this and kind of the application that we are seeing is if it's a small, medium-sized plant, maybe they don't have a full control system where they're doing all the data logging for their water treatment side. The Horner data logger solution, it really gives them one piece of equipment they can hang on the wall in a common area where their treatment process is, especially on the industrial side. They can run all these values directly to one unit or add it to a system that's already existing to be able to data log that, be able to export reports on CSV files that can be stored. And it allows them to do that without having to break open a large integration project. So it's instead of thinking about it as a plant integration project, it can be more of a hardware installation. And then we see a lot of plants with a lot of different protocols that they're trying to work with. So this device can be used to land these analog signals and then be able to integrate it seamlessly within the plant's PLC or DCS system using Modbus or using Ethernet IP. And that's a really big benefit of this system and benefit of the Horner solution is that it can be used alongside other equipment in the field. And it can be used just as a data logger, or it can be used as a way to network certain analog values that they're already trying to do anyway. So it's a really good in-between piece between the sensors and between the control system.
Yeah, and from an installation standpoint and setup standpoint, it's really very straightforward. I mean, all the steps that are required, you're going to mount the enclosure, you're going to connect it up to the appropriate wiring. It's going to need power. You're going to need to land those sensors. To take advantage of all the features, you'll probably want to connect your local factory LAN. And then it's a matter of just setting it up from the touchscreen. Depending on which 4, or there could be less maybe in some scenarios, you're going to need to configure the sensor inputs, again, just from the touchscreen. What are the engineering units? What did the scaling look like based on the sensor information? If you want to do alarming, you can set that up as well. If you want to, again, have this unit sitting on your plant network for a variety of different functions, then you can set that up as well. Really, it's probably just going to be a matter of setting up the IP address. This unit also has the ability to deliver emails if you want to alarm via email, or maybe if you want to deliver some of the data log information over an email, that can be handled as well. So it's really a very straightforward installation process, to be sure. Now, for those of you who are interested in purchasing or maybe just trying out a Horner Solutions chart recorder, there's several different ways you can get more information. Of course, you can go to our website. Now, for the Horner Solutions product, the website is Horner Solution, just without the S, hornersolution.com. Or, of course, you can contact our sales group on email at sales@heapg.com. But of course, if you are in one of the surrounding states of Indiana, so Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, or Illinois, and you're interested in this product, you can take advantage directly of Robert's expertise. So I've got Robert's information here. So anything you want to add to this, Robert?
We are happy to help in any way. If you have questions generally about any kind of measurement, it's really what we focus on the process side. We're very versed in the Horner controllers as well. And I think that this is a really great product for us to talk about and to be able to put it all together into one solution for our customers. So I'm really happy to help however I can.
Excellent. Well, once again, Robert, I really want to thank you for lending your unique expertise to our topic today. And hopefully, even for those folks who aren't necessarily dealing with water discharge, they got a lot of great information about different water quality metrics, what's important, and those sorts of things. So once again, Robert, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Okay, this is the part of the program where I remind you that we're here every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, whether we're fully live, pre-recorded, or anywhere in between. But we've always got folks standing by to answer your questions in the chat section if you're watching live. And if you're watching on replay, like a lot of you do, give us those comments and questions in the comments section, and they will be directed immediately to our marketing team, and we'll get those answered just as soon as we can. Okay, we're celebrating our 10th year of Horner Lighting Group products. Check out those great Horner Lighting Group videos on our Horner APG YouTube channel right alongside our automation videos. Okay, the Horner 2024 OCS training schedule is in, so you don't want to miss your opportunity to sign up for one of those great training courses. You're going to have a great experience. We can pretty much guarantee that. So go to our website at the address shown on the screen and get signed up today. Okay, so next week, we're going to be doing one of our industry standard type programs, and we're going to be covering how IO-Link works. Now, IO-Link is one of the hottest ways, one of the most popular ways these days to connect smart sensors to PLCs. So we're going to talk specifically, how does IO-Link work? So you won't want to miss this great industry-specific topic. Okay, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, don't hesitate to do so. It doesn't cost anything. And if you choose notifications when you subscribe, you'll be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. Okay, once again, many thanks to Robert from Frontline to offering his industry expertise today. I hope you got a lot out of that. And until next week, let's all get out there and do us some good.